What's up, everyone? It's Bones here. In today's video, I'll be showcasing Time Thief Runick, and I know it's another Runick deck, but I promise it is a cool one. And before I begin, if you could happen to click on those thumbs up and subscribe buttons, it would be greatly appreciated, as it goes a long way in supporting the channel and shows me that you like content like this. Clicking on those notification bells would also mean a lot, as they notify you when I upload on the channel. So I just want to play out a test hand here to show what I hope the deck can accomplish before I go into the replays. The synergy here is that Time Thieves generally want to go into a rank 4, as we're going to go into our Runick tip. Also, a quick tip, for whatever reason, the counter trap is always banished via Mind Hacker or Runick spells, so do take that into consideration. I'm going to normal summon the Time Thief Winder, and the Runick spells serve as a second way to get a level 4 without having to normal summon, as that's one struggle the Time Thieves have generally had, where they don't have enough good main deck monsters to really spam out level 4s, and Runick is an entire archetype that can do that, and provide a draw engine that can also help you play around certain cards, while also being able to use stuff like the Regulator as bait, and things like that. So I'm going to go into the redoer here, and what I want to show here is how easy it is to get interruptions, as we have the Retrograde, which is a spell and trap negate, as long as you control a Time Thief monster. It also attaches the card to a Time Thief Exceed monster, which is important to note. Then you have your potential Runick interruptions along with a potential hand trap, and in some cases you'll even get flyback, where you can attach a trap onto redoer and make that another interruption. So with a pretty consistent way to play around evenly, not care too much about Nibiru, the ability to even play around kaijus, and with the flexibility of the deck, there's definitely some potential, but there are some cons that I'll get into as the video goes on. I also want to show something else that this deck is kind of good at. So for this first replay here, I'm going to show what happens when everything kind of just plays out perfectly, and we'll be going against Lunalights. They don't end up imperming the Regulator, and I'm pretty sure that when they saw Regulator, they knew something was up, because you don't really want to lead with Regulator and open yourself into an Ash, because otherwise that is auto loss, and I did play heavily into losing to Ash when I did this. But unless they had something like Ash plus Imperm, they wouldn't have been able to stop us from at least getting the Fountain up, which made me think I might as well just risk it. So from here I'm going to use the two effects of our Time Thieves. We'll get a Foolish along with a Search as we get ourselves the Retrograde, and then we'll end up sending the Temp, as we'll then use the Temp effect from our graveyard, as we'll bring back the Adjuster to our hand, and from here we have access into our redoer. We also have the Winder and the Adjuster in our hand for follow-up, along with the pair of Runick spells, and then from here we're going to activate the Brilliant Flames, as we're going to use the Huggin, and our opponent is actually going to use the Imperm on this, and I know that a lot of people may have found it surprising that he didn't Imperm the Regulator, but if he did that, we were going to go into the redoer anyways with our Gary, the level 4 Runick, so there is that. And from here we're not going to be able to get Fountain, but we do have 3 interruptions with our redoer still, and we're going to go onto our opponent's turn, and you can see they don't really open the greatest, but they do have ways to play. We're able to attach a spell card as they normal summon the Kaleido, they send the Martin, and then from there they're going to use the effect of the Butterfly, as they'll then be able to raise the attack of the Kaleido by 1000, but more importantly they get it into the graveyard so they can special summon a Lunalight monster from their hand, and they're going to summon the Emerald Bird, which basically just gets them a pitch plus draw 1, as they're going to send the second copy of the wolf that they drew, and they're going to activate the Foolish Burial Goods, which we will end up ashing, seeing how low they are on cards and the interruptions that we still have. But our opponent is going to go into the Fire Fist rank 4 that allows them to negate our stuff until the end of our turn, and we're going to negate that with the Freezing Curse, as we'll then be able to get banishes, and this is where kind of the cool synergy comes in. As you saw, we just stole a card and we banished more with the Runick stuff, and it can come up in games where you actually get your opponent to a low deck amount when they run through their engine. So we're going to get our redoer back, go to our turn, use the redoer to get an attach, as we do get another spell. We draw into the Slumber as well, as we're going to use that redoer's effect in order to draw, and we get a Gamma Seal. We're going to tribute over the Fire Fist so they can't use it again, and then we're going to normal summon our Winder, and from here we can get ourselves a search for the flyback. So we could have technically detached the spell to special summon the Winder, getting ourselves a rank 4 that way, but because we got the Slumber, we're just going to play this a little bit differently as we have access to rank 4 summoning this way, and we have to skip our battle phase anyways, so it's not like I wanted to overcommit either. And we're going to go into our Perpetua, as this will give us materials on the Redoor as we put another copy of Flyback on it, giving us an interruption. Go into our battle phase after setting the Flyback. We have to skip it because of the Runick cards, and then we're going to use the Perpetua, getting ourselves a spell, and then from here on the standby phase we'll get to steal another opponent's card, use the Perpetua, which will bring back the Winder. The Winder will then be able to get us a search here as we'll get ourselves the Adjuster, and then we'll go on to the main phase where my opponent is going to allure. They'll end up banishing one as they're then going to activate the Foolish Burial, then the Emerald Bird as they're then going to use the Emerald Bird's effect in order to target the Martin and special summon that out, as they're then going to use the Kaleido even though it's negated to get the cost send, and they're going to use the Martin in order to special summon itself out and bring back the Kaleido to hand. They'll then normal summon the Kaleido, which this is where I am going to interrupt them as now they have used their normal summon and they've pretty much committed to the board with one card left that we had responses to, but we're then going to see them activate the Wolf. We'll use the Retrograde on that, and this will attach the Wolf onto the Perpetua, which prompts the Scoop, and we even got a Runick tip top deck, which is kind of nice. Now, in this second game, I actually happened to kind of brick a little while I ran into somebody that might be the Pharaoh, and we're going to see them start here by activating the Water Enchantress, and they're going to set up a pretty big board. I do have to say that for a Dark Magician build, and take this with a grain of salt when I say it, but they actually did have some creative deck building ideas in which they didn't commit hard into the normal summoning aspect. They only played one rod. They happened to play the Timaeus, they played Magician's Souls and Illusion of Chaos, of course, and they happened to just not want their normal summon, focus on the special summoning aspect of Dark Magicians with the Eternal Soul, and you'll see they're actually able to even put up a sizable board with a hand trap, which isn't too bad, that you can get from draws with stuff like Faithful Servant and stuff like that. But we're going to see that the opponent is now going to use the Faithful Servant. They'll then end up putting the field spell on top of their deck, activate the Dark Magic Circle, which will add them the field spell. This will get them access into Eternal Soul, but they're going to use the Servant first, getting them a draw, which they draw into the quick play that lets them fusion or ritual summon, and they're going to pass on 2 sets along with the Griffin Rider. So this is where I meant where it wasn't necessarily terrible. It is still very bricky because you have to play the adventure stuff along with the DM, but I just thought it was a cute idea as we're going to Gamma Seal the Griffin Rider, activate the Runick tip, and then from here they're going to Ash that, which ends up turning this into a little bit of a grind because we're going to Called by the Grave that, and then from there we'll be able to get our search for the Destruction. They didn't end up going for the Fountain because we needed to be able to out their circle with the Eternal Soul set. We're going to activate the Brilliant Flames here, go into our Hugin, and this is how we'll get into the Fountain. As we're going to then activate the Fountain here, our opponent will end up activating the Eternal Soul. They'll bring back the Dark Magician, and then from there, they're going to attempt to use the circle, but we're going to chain the Destruction to that, and they don't have a way to stop this, which is nice. So they're then going to end up chaining the fusion spell, as they'll then be able to go into the Dark Magicians, and when the Fountain resolves, they'll actually be able to get a draw. We do banish one of their Dark Magicians and an Eye of Timaeus, if you saw that, but then be able to get 3 draws here, as we do draw into our Time Thief engine, and this is something that I like about it because when you start drawing with your Runick cards, you're able to fix a problem that Time Thieves have in regards to when they see their own cards. They don't really have a lot of ways to bring out a lot of bodies, so being able to draw into those via the Runick stuff is nice. So we'll then be able to get the Redoer out, as we'll use the Flyback in order to attach a spell from our opponent's graveyard. We're going to use it to get a draw 1, getting us the Storm. We're going to set 2, go to the battle phase as we have to skip it, and then our opponent is going to top deck DM. We're going to use the Redoer here, as we're going to get a monster, use its effect in order to just dodge whatever we needed to get ourselves a draw as well, as we get the Runick tip, which happens to be a great top deck, and this lets us play it a little bit differently, as we're going to get our Destruction now, and then we can use the Destruction on the standby phase. Our opponent is going to use the Dark Magicians to draw, as they do get into the Timaeus, which was a crazy top deck, and then from there they're going to lose their board, but they will have follow-up because of that Timaeus. top deck. So they're going to lose their board as we're going to use our fountain in order to get a draw 3, and from here we'll then be able to continue playing as we did get into a slumber. Our opponent is going to summon the rod as they're going to get a search for the dark magic circle, then going to activate it, in which now they'll end up using their soul servant, and then from there they're going to activate the Timaeus as they can special summon it out by tributing the rod, and they're going to use its effect in order to fuse away with the dark magician, and they bring out the dragoon. So this is an immediate threat, which was kind of nuts, but we're going to use the dragoon now in order to pop our Huggin, and we'll just return the Huggin, letting that go because we do have a win con. We just have to hope our opponent plays into it, and you'll see how we're going to do it, and what I wanted to show previously that I mentioned in the first replay. So you'll see that our opponent is on 4 cards left in deck. We're going to try to bait the dragoon with the flyback. We're going to put a card onto the redoor. We put a monster on there because we're out of traps. We're going to go to the standby phase where we'll now use the redoor, and from here we essentially have game. We just have to bait out the dragoon, and we're going to special summon out the adjuster as we normal summon the temp, and this will give us rank 4 access. So we're just going to go into Bagu, turn everything into defense. Our opponent can't negate our slumber now, so we'll use it on the Bagu, mill them out, and our opponent will surrender. Now, in this third replay, our opponent drew kind of nuts, but I want to show how much this deck can actually play through, and we're going to be able to see that our opponent is going to full combo as they even open the Herald, so they're going to get into a lot of combo pieces as they already have access to the Thubin, they got their Ben 10, they're going to go into the Mubetas, they can send the Zeta. So from here, our opponent is going to use the effect of the Zeta, attributing off the Ben 10. The Ben 10 will then be able to get a search as they do get the Drytron ritual spell, and they'll get themselves the Idatin as they're then going to activate the ritual spell. They'll tribute off material from the Mubetas, they'll get themselves the Ben 10, tribute it off for the Choju, I believe it's called. Yeah, the Choju is the level 6 Manju/Senju, and it basically is a pre-preparation of rights as they search off a Lancia, and they're going to get themselves the Dark Magician of Chaos along with the ritual spell, and you can see that they're on 2 of them. I've seen that's a more common thing on Drytron builds, as they're going to use the graveyard effect, the first ritual spell, use the ritual spell again, detaching one from Mubeta in order to bring out the Idatin, and now they can use the Idatin's effect, getting back the ritual spell. They'll then have access into a rank 6. They summoned out the Choju, they'll use its effect in order to send the Delta, and then from there they can use the Delta, pitching the Chaos Max or the Magician of Black Chaos Max, and they'll end up drawing into a called by as they're going to activate the Meteonis Drytron, bring back the Idatin as they're then going to activate its effect, loop back the field spell as they're going to go into the Dynamondo, activate the field spell again, get back the Idatin. Idatin will then end up searching them the Herald ritual spell, and this is where the board gets actually kind of tough to break as they're going to tribute off the Idatin. The effect of the Herald field spell will then trigger as they're going to be able to get it back as well as the Idatin, and then they're going to go into the end phase as we'll go on to our turn, and now we have to try to break this. Conveniently we top deck the Ash, but going to activate the Runick tip here. Our opponent is going to activate the Dynamondo as they're going to use Lancia in response to that, then chain the Beatrice as they're going to buy my Ash, and then from there we'll be able to see our opponent kind of go off as we're going to be locked out of monster effects, I believe, from here. Or no, they added to the hand because they hadn't properly summoned it on their turn. So we're going to activate the Runick Fountain now as they're going to negate that with the Herald. And then from here we're going to activate our Slumber. And then we'll be able to get our Gary as we're going to use its effect to get back the Fountain. And then activate the Fountain as we're going to normal summon the Winder. The effect of the Winder in order to get us the Adjuster. And then from here we can go into the Bagu. And I did this to kind of force my opponent into a Unicorn, knowing that we had not only follow-up, but we had a Runick quick play spell, and they end up exactly going for the Unicorn, but still going to be a lot to overcome as they do have a Cyber Emergency. They then get themselves the effect of the Gamma, and this just gives them extra bodies. They're going to attempt to go for game as they're going for the Alpha now in order to get themselves the Ben 10, use the Delta in order to tribute off the Ben 10. Here they'll get the draw off of Delta as they'll use the effect, the Ben 10, to get the Herald. They'll then normal summon the Herald. The Herald will get its effect, which will end up sending an Entis. We're going to use the Destruction in order to protect the field spell here, and we'll also be able to get ourselves a draw as we're going to draws actually. And we're going to get 2 Runick spells along with the ship, I believe it's called. Our opponent is going to go into access code, and on resolution of the attack boost, we're going to activate the freezing curse. And this will essentially save us from getting killed, as our opponent has to go into the Fafnir now, send the Gamma, activate the field spells. This is going to get them a search for the Nova. From there, they can activate the Nova, which will get them another special summon. They're then going to go into the battle phase to proceed to try to attack for game, but we do have the extra Runick spell that we will activate on the access code attack. And from here, we're going to bring out our Huggin. Our Huggin can get us into another field spell so that we don't top deck it. Also be able to get the Huggin back to our extra deck, as our opponent is going to end up going into a Downard and a Zeus. Kind of ends the game here, as I don't have an out to this unless I draw an out. And you're going to see that we do get the Slumber, which isn't an out, so I'm just going to proceed to try to play it anyways. We're going to activate the Slumber. Our opponent is going to Zeus on the Fountain. Then from there, they're going to have another Zeus, which, again, we won't be able to do much. We're going to try to bait with the Fountain, activate or normal summon our Regulator. They're going to chain the Zeus to that, and we have nothing left that we can do. This is a replay against pure Plunder, and you can see that we happen to get a hand of all Runick cards, but we will end up drawing into some Time Thieves, as our opponent is going to use the black in order to get back their blue or red, and they're going to go into their Blackbeard, as we're then going to draw for turn, get ourselves the Adjuster, as we're going to activate the Fountain. We're going to activate the Brilliant Flames in order to pop the Blackbeard, and we're just doing this because the only thing I'm really fearing at the moment, as long as they don't have anything that they can do with it, is just a free pop, as we're going to activate the Destruction now, and they'll end up losing both their cards here, as it was a rivalry. We'll activate the Slumber, and this will allow us to get the Gary, and then from here we can use the Fountain, which, again, this is just a way to only accelerate your deck, but play through Ash. As we do get into the Winder, we'll be able to special summon out the Adjuster. This will get us the Retrograde, as we're then going to go into the Redoer. We can set the Flyback and the Retrograde, go to the battle phase to skip it. Opponent will end up drawing into a Veiler and scooping on that. Finally, for this final replay, we do have a replay against Kashtira. We're going to start this one seeing our opponent special summon out the Fenrir, into their Scareclaw Kashtira, out the Rise Heart, as they're just going to go for the Arise Heart pass, special summoning out their 3rd level 7. And from here, they're going to send the top 3 cards from their deck to the graveyard, use the effect of Rise Heart in order to finish the Ogre and banish 3 cards from the top of our deck. We'll then be able to bring out the Arise Heart. And this is just a nice thing about playing the Runick cards. You have so many outs to the Arise Heart path where it doesn't really matter. It can be painful to not see them in this deck in particular, as it does take multiple level 4s to make a rank 4. We're going to activate the Fountain here. We'll then be able to activate the Destruction. We're going to pop an Imperm that they had 2 of them set. And from here, they're going to activate the Rise Heart, which is mandatory. And then we're going to activate the Fountain as Chainlink 2. They're also going to get the effect of Papyrus that we banished off the Destruction, which gets them back to Birth. We're going to get 2 draws here. Normal summon the Winder, and they scoop to a Time Thief, and I thought that was kind of cool. Finally, with all the replays out of the way, I can get onto the deck profile. And I tried making it more Runick heavy, as noted. Time Thief cards, when you draw them together, they aren't great. It's still an under-supported archetype that doesn't have enough ways to play on its own, but when you can get the free level 4s through the Runick spells along with the extra disruptions, it's not that bad. And I also think that when you're able to pair the Retrograde to your boards with Fountain and your other Runick quick plays, I think it actually becomes pretty formidable, especially when you consider that Redoer can steal cards that can either become draws, interruptions, or just a way to dodge stuff, being able to banish more resources via the Runick quick plays. For the ratios, I tried going with 3 of each of the best Time Thief cards, and then 1 of the Ship and 1 of the Temper, and this is your best target to send off of the Adjuster, which a great way to either get your Adjuster or your Winder back into your hand for follow-up, and that's something that I like about playing it. Also an extra name, which is why you want to play it, so that when you normal summon it, you can potentially bring out your Adjuster. Tip is the second one, which ideally, again, like Temper, you don't really want to draw it, but if you do, it is a name and you can special summon it out. Normal summon it in order to special summon out your Adjuster, or it plus any Runick quick play is still a time thief. Any other rank 4, as you see the second MVP next to Redoer here, really is Bagu, and the turn 1s, I know that I probably didn't show a lot of turn 1 replays, and it's because they're going to make your time thief plus Runick board that I showed on the test hand, or you could just end Bagu pass with maybe some Runick quick plays. Also have Ash and stuff like the Gamma Seal. Keep in mind that because I do play the Gamma Seal, I like going second more than I like going first in this deck. Of course, that does have its downsides because there's just decks like Dark Worlds, back row decks, which can also be a struggle for this deck overcome, but overall, it's still a fun idea that I thought was worth making a video on. People who just like to play with archetypes and different ideas they can potentially implement onto their own. Last thing I would like to talk about is the Time Thief spell and traps, and you'll see that I'm only on 2 flyback. Like 3 was way too much. When you start seeing all your Time Thief cards, the deck starts to feel like table 500 again. So I wanted to even play the Dispelling, the Storm, the maxing out on the Runick quick plays. I think that the focus for this deck really should be that. Moment I tried tinkering more Time Thief stuff, it felt like the deck started to fall apart. That being said, they are bricks somewhat. I say somewhat because they do have their usage in opening the flyback or the quick play. The quick play basically just lets you special summon out a Time Thief, which it can special summon out your Winder. Your Winder can get you into another level 4. You can special summon out your Adjuster with it, send the Temper, then bring back the Adjuster to hand with the Temper, normal summon the Adjuster and get your rank 4 that way. The flyback can basically just be a discard for your Huggin, and if you do have rank 4 access, the flyback can get the attachment of another flyback onto your Redoer in order to get an interruption with it. Only you do want to keep the retrograde in deck. In order to search it out, because the spell and trap negate is pretty strong, you also do get to attach the card, which is even stronger. Just all the thoughts I have about the deck. Anyways, I'll get onto the card by card. The 3 Adjuster, the 3 Winder, the 3 Regulator, the 1 Temp, the 1 Bezel, the 1 Storm, the 3 Flames, the 3 Destruction, the 3 Curse, the 3 Tip, the 3 Ash, the 3 Kaijus, the 3 Slumber, the 2 Fountain, and the 1 Dispelling, the 2 Flybacks, the 1 Retrograde, and the Startup to round out the main deck. Extra deck, we have the Bujin Link, the Zeus, and the Exciton, and I did 1 and 1 because, quite frankly, you're not going into your Zeus a lot, but it's still worth having. It does come up, and it does your deck options. So the Exciton is nice in certain situations, worth playing in my opinion because it's almost like a second Zeus. You just have to be careful of how many cards you have in hand, because if you start to amass advantage with your Runick Fountain and stuff, then may not be the right thing to go for this. This is more of a comeback card, which is what I like about it. We have the 1 Double Barrel, the 2 Redoer, and the 2 Perpetua. We have the 1 Bagu, the Castel, which is another nice option because since you're skipping your battle phase, being able to have a deck that can easily get rank 4s, this just becomes an out for annoying stuff that your opponent may try to put out. Stuff like Mirror Jade that happen to use their banish on their turn. They go onto your turn, you have rank 4 access, go into Castel and dodge the board wipe. That's pretty useful. Being able to potentially out Floodgates with 2 of your Psychics 4s is also kind of important, so that's why that's in there. You'll also see that the Tornado Dragon is in here as a second way to back row pop with the Bujin Link. As I said, back row decks can kind of be a problem with this, so if you're able to pair your Tornado Dragon or Bujin Link along with the Destruction and stuff like that, you can kind of circumvent back row decks. Ash is also pretty strong against most back row decks. Stuff like Eldritch and the Welcome Labyrinth. Stuff like Scarlet, the Welcome Labyrinth that can get the Ash Blossom. Then we have the 2 Garys, and the 2 Garys because of the level 4 importance, and the 2 Huggins to round out the deck profile. I would like to go over Cowboy and Steel Swarm Roach. They're both definitely solid options that you can play this format. Even Cowboy is more for time. With all of that out of the way, I thank you all so much for watching if you made it this far, and I hope you all enjoyed. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them down below. It's Bones, signing out.